Okay, guys, just a bit of recap. So far, so good. We have built two workflows, the GetPlayerRequest workflow and the SoundContoller workflow. In the GetPlayerRequest workflow, we begin by showing a form, and the form is called the start form. Basically, the player is going to provide their name, the number of questions they choose to answer, the category of question they choose to answer, and the difficulty level. When the player does that, then they can either choose play button to play the game or the end button to cancel out of the game. And while that form is being shown, we introduced a background music to keep the game exciting. So there's going to be a background sound that will keep playing while the form is being shown. Now, the do while here is responsible for making sure that the form is still visible until values has been received from the player. So as soon as the player clicks the play button, all the bunch of data that the player provided into the forms will be captured in the game request variable. And that is what happens here in the multiple assign. Lastly, whether the player clicked the end button, or if the player clicks the end button or the play button, then the form would be closed. And when the form is closed, then the background sound would be stopped. And if you take a look at the arguments in the body of the GetPlayerRequest workflow, you can see that the game request that captures all the data that would have been provided in the form exits this workflow as an out argument. Now, GetPlayerRequest is invoked in the main because main is going to be where the entire project would be built into. So GetPlayerRequest workflow is invoked here, and the game request that exits out of the workflow binds with an argument called game request that exists as a variable in the body of the main. It is this variable that we would need to pass into the next workflow, which we will be building, and that will be the workflow that makes the API call. So game request is going to contain some data that we need to pass into our API in order to make the API call to get the list of questions that the player would need to answer. Don't forget that game request is of the variable type dictionary of string of string. Without wasting too much time, let's dive in to build the workflow that calls the API.